A 9-foot shadow followed me 47 miles on the Appalachian Trail. It copied every step, but whispered my real name. The Appalachian Trail represents one of America's most epic footpaths, stretching an unbroken 2,190 miles from the rocky summit of Springer Mountain in Georgia all the way to the knife-edge summit of Mount Katahdin in Maine, weaving through 14 states and crossing 8 national parks and forests along the way. These are the oldest mountains on the continent, their rounded peaks worn smooth by millions of years of wind, rain, and ice, cloaked in dense hemlock forests so thick that sunlight struggles to penetrate the interlocking canopy, creating a perpetual twilight beneath the branches. In early April 2024, during the height of spring wildflower season, I launched my ambitious thru-hike attempt as Ethan Cole, a 34-year-old architect from downtown Atlanta who had reached a breaking point with endless client revisions, a bitter divorce settlement that left me emotionally hollow, and the constant urban grind of traffic-clogged interstates and fluorescent-lit office cubicles. My backpack weighed a hefty 38 pounds fully loaded, a Big Agnes copper spur UL2 tent that promised ultralight protection against the elements, a Western Mountaineering Summerlight sleeping bag rated to 35 degrees, a Katadyn Hiker Pro water filter for purifying mountain streams, a bear canister bulging with dehydrated Knorr pasta sides, peanut butter packets, and energy gels, plus a comprehensive set of National Geographic topo maps folded meticulously inside a waterproof case, just in case my smartphone's GPS failed in the remote backcountry sections. The trailhead parking lot at Amicalola Falls State Park buzzed with the nervous energy of new thru-hikers snapping group selfies under the iconic arched bridge, veteran section hikers dispensing last-minute advice about black bear encounters and preventing trench foot, and benevolent trail angels distributing homemade whoopie pies still warm from the oven, along with Sharpie markers for signing the shelter logbooks that dotted the trail every few days. I scrawled my chosen trail name, Blueprint, on a piece of duct tape affixed to my pack's shoulder strap, a nod to my architectural background and the precise planning that had gone into this 5-month life reset. The famous white blazes, 2-inch rectangular paint stripes applied to trees, rocks, and signposts, beckoned upward from the approach trail, leading through blooming tunnels of mountain laurel, whose pink blossoms perfumed the crisp spring air, mingling with the damp, earthy scent of soil just awakening from winter's deep freeze. The first few days blurred into a punishing rhythm of ascent and descent. 8,000-foot cumulative elevation gains that shredded my calf muscles and turned my quads to jelly. Patches of bloodroot unfurling their alien white flowers like secret signals along the forest floor, and the relentless chorus of spring peepers trilling through the nights spent in crowded lean-to shelters where the wooden floorboards creaked under shifting bodies, and the air hung heavy with the combined odors of instant noodle dinners and unwashed hiking clothes. Sleep came in fragmented bursts, interrupted by acorn bombardments from hyperactive squirrels patrolling the roof shingles overhead, and the persistent rustling of rhododendron branches clawing at my tent fly like insistent skeletal fingers trying to gain entry. On night 4, while making a routine privy break at 1:17 a.m. from the Woody Gap shelter, my headlamp's narrow beam sliced through a thickening fog soup that had rolled in from the nearby valleys, illuminating the dew-slicked gravel path in ghostly patches. That's when I first heard it. Footsteps, echoing mine with surgical precision. Left boot crunching on loose gravel. Deliberate right foot pause shuffle, positioned exactly 10 yards to my rear in the impenetrable darkness. I froze midstream, bladder suddenly forgotten, every instinct screaming predator avoidance. The mystery steps halted in perfect synchronization. Spinning a full 360 degrees with headlamps sweeping wildly, the beam caught only empty trail snaking downhill through moonlit switchbacks, flanked by impenetrable walls of mountain laurel, their glossy leaves dripping condensation like nervous sweat. Was it wind rustling debris? An overzealous squirrel brigade? A fellow hiker with insomnia matching my bathroom schedule? I rationalized it away, hurried back to my zipped sleeping bag cocooned in polycryo liner. But sleep evaded as peripheral awareness heightened to every creak and snap in the surrounding woods. Come dawn, as I brewed coffee over my jet boil amid the shelter's morning bustle, a fellow southbound hiker named Sparrow mentioned casually over her oatmeal packet seeing a peripheral tall silhouette circling the shelter perimeter throughout the night, its head swiveling to track the positions of sleeping hikers like a lighthouse beam methodically sweeping the shore. Pressing northward through North Georgia's relentless roller coaster terrain of steep climbs followed by equally brutal descents, the mimic's presence solidified into something far more tangible than fleeting night sounds. Day 6 found me ascending the infamous boulder fields of Trey Mountain, where slick, moss-covered quartzite rocks shifted treacherously underfoot and required 3 points of contact at all times. My every labored footfall now doubled from the shadows by an invisible stalker. My exhausted huffing and puffing mirrored by identical heavy breathing, positioned 10 paces directly behind me. The distinctive scrape of my boot soles against jagged stone echoing back with identical pitch and volume. Glancing rearward over shoulders slick with a mixture of sweat and morning mist, my eyes caught nothing but dissipating vapor trails curling upward from disturbed ferns along the trail edges. Yet the sensation of being watched burned like physical weight between my shoulder blades. Trail magic appeared like divine intervention at Hogpen Gap, a styrofoam cooler beaded with condensation, containing ice-cold PBR tallboys that tasted like liquid salvation sliding down my parched throat, alongside dense chocolate muffins crumbling sweetly between my trail-grimed fingers. Temporary anchors to sanity amid the creeping isolation that the AT enforces so ruthlessly on solo long-distance hikers. That evening at Fontana Dam Shelter, a massive Adirondack-style structure overlooking the massive TVA lake shimmering under twilight, the air buzzed with northbound Thru-hiker scuttlebutt traded over boiling Lipton noodle packets and flickering headlamp beams. Whispers of the Echo Wraith, a persistent Appalachian legend describing malevolent spirits of long-lost souls bound eternally to mimic the precise pacing patterns of unsuspecting thru-hikers, gradually wearing down their will until they bolt terrified off-trail directly into hidden rock fissures where the entities harvest their fear energy to feed ancient mountain spirits. A grizzled veteran section hiker named Bearbait, his beard streaked with decades of trail dust, growled the tale over his bubbling ramen. It copies every step, till you panic off-blaze into the fissures. Saw it claim a flip-flopper back in '08 right near here. Pack found hanging empty from a rhododendron branch. Nervous chuckles rippled through the circle, accompanied by puffs of hand-rolled tobacco smoke drifting upward into the starry dome overhead. But my spine crawled with visceral chill as I recalled the privy steps with newfound context. That same night, under my polycryo tarp strung taut between 2 massive oaks whose root systems bulged from the earth like exposed veins, the mimic escalated its psychological warfare. The distinctive nylon rustle of my sleeping bag perfectly synced with every position shift I made, seeking comfort on the uneven ground. The metallic gnashing of my tent zipper teeth, gnashing in eerie chorus with identical sounds originating from the darkness beyond the tarp's edge. Desperate headlamp sweeps illuminated only grotesquely elongated shadow distortions, stretching unnaturally from the gnarled trunks of nearby trail oaks. Limbs dangling impossibly down to mid-shin levels. Skulls ballooned in proportions anatomically wrong, yet disturbingly humanoid. Sleep became a fleeing prey animal that I chased futilely through the long hours. By dawn's first gray light filtering through the canopy, exhaustion propelled me into a frantic 22-mile death march northward, the white blazes blurring into streaks of salvation as panic fueled my strides past unsuspecting day hikers, blissfully unaware of the hunter now locked onto my trail. North Carolina's legendary balds exploded into view like nature's grand amphitheaters. Vast, grassy domes stripped treeless by ancient fires and grazing sheep, offering heart-stopping 360-degree panoramic vistas of layered mountain ridges fading into atmospheric blue infinity toward every horizon point. Their total exposure amplifying my growing paranoia to unbearable levels under the relentless midday sun. Standing Indian Mountain, enveloped in 5 p.m. heat haze, electrified every neck hair on my body. The fetid, warm exhalation ghosting across my nape carried unmistakable undertones of rotting vegetation and wet canine fur, while 3 distinct sets of footfalls triangulated my position with military precision. My own boots, center stage, sinister mimics positioned exactly 10 yards to my left flank, right flank, and directly rear. Their steps varying terrain perfectly to maintain equidistant formation. Overhead branches cracked in impossible geometric patterns, whipsawing back and forth without any discernible wind source stirring the surrounding air, the sound profile suggesting massive weight distribution shifting stealthily through the tree line above. Descending toward the raucous chaos of Nantahala Outdoor Center offered fleeting respite amid the sizzling burger grills, sending savory smoke signals skyward, and resupply hordes of fellow thru-hikers swapping spot tracker coordinates and debating the merits of various ultralight quilts. The waitress I confessed my mounting shadow woes to slipped me a small Cherokee hawk feather talisman wrapped in red thread, murmuring, "For the slant-eye watchers that pace the high balds." The trail resumed its solitary demands amid explosions of flame azaleas in violent neon pinks and oranges blanketing the slopes, turkey vultures riding thermal updrafts overhead like ominous black kites scouting for death. This false security shattered completely on the approach to Klingman's Dome's paved observation tower.
The mimic steps now deliberately dragged, mimicking my accumulating fatigue-induced shuffle perfectly. Coalescing whispers formed from swirling wind currents into recognizable phonemes that chilled deeper than exposure. Ethan, print, blue, print. My real Christian name uttered clearly, despite my trail name, Blueprint, plastered across every visible surface. Had it glimpsed my driver's license through pack mesh during a privy stop? Trail name completely ignored in favor of personal identity theft. Icewater Spring Shelter, perched precariously at 5,900 feet elevation, became ground zero as mountain winds howled banshee-like symphonies, rattling the chain-link fencing, midnight tarp flap frenzy forcing me to peer outward into the void. A monolithic 8-foot ebon column silhouette with obsidian-reflecting eyes locked onto my exact, huddled crouch posture through the maelstrom. It tilted its elongated skull in silent query. I involuntarily mirrored the tilt in paralyzed fascination. It stepped one probing foot forward, crunching frost-rimed gravel. I retreated one identical pace backward, maintaining formation. Dawn found shelter mates discovering me, ashen-faced and babbling incoherently about pacing entities, while dirt encircling the structure bore 2 perfect rings of identical size 12 boot prints, offset precisely 18 feet apart. The mimic impressions sunk double depth, suggesting a 280-pound frame exerting deliberate pressure into the frozen soil. My mandated Gatlinburg Zero Day transformed into frantic library research, delving deep into the dusty Appalachian folklore stacks, gathering decades of yellowed news clippings and handwritten field notes. Echo Wraiths, catalogued as 18th-century surveyor spirits whose compasses failed during early colonial mapping expeditions, now bound eternally to mimic the precise footfall patterns of unsuspecting modern thru-hikers, gradually eroding their psychological resistance until they bolt terrified off established white blazes directly into concealed rock clefts and fissure systems riddled throughout the ancient geology, where the entities harvest raw fear pheromones to sustain ancient ridge-top spirits demanding tribute. Parallel Cherokee oral traditions spoke of Sulkalu, the slant-gaze giant who shadowed unwary braves through the high country, specifically to steal sacred fire from their camps, his elongated footsteps echoing eternally through mountain laurel hells. Modern documented cases chilled blood. A 2019 flipper hiker vanished completely near Davenport Gap, with only his ultralight pack located, hanging empty from a rhododendron branch 200 yards off-trail, terminating at a sheer granite drop-off, surrounded by paired footprint impressions, leading nowhere. Informal ranger chats over black coffee at park headquarters confirmed the grim decadal pattern of non-summiters whose last logbook entries mentioned pacing shadows or echo footsteps. Armed with this grim compendium of countermeasures, I deployed every folkloric tactic in desperate rotation, blasting bluegrass playlist through my Bluetooth speaker with banjo licks and fiddle runs echoing raucously through the rhododendron tunnels, maintaining nonsensical monologue aloud about architectural drafting techniques and favorite pizza toppings to fill auditory space, even attempting backward walk sections on relatively flat terrain to disrupt pattern mimicry. The mimic countered with horrifying adaptability, humming dissonant counterpoint harmonies underneath my bluegrass exactly 1 octave lower, filtering through ground vibration, babbling gibberish echo responses, mocking my monologues in perfect phonetic mimicry, executing fluid, reverse-stepping mockery that flowed smoother than my own clumsy attempts. Desperation peaked during solo camp at Davenport Gap, where fire popped, isolation amplified every crackle. Across dancing flames, an indistinct humanoid mass coalesced, with coal-black eyes reflecting firelight identically as I poked the burning logs with my titanium spork. Leaf rustle around perimeter spelling deliberate message, join, ridge, forever, in falling detritus. Moonrise triggered bolt into darkness following memory of white blazes through pitch black. Virginia's Blue Ridge region tripled the existential horrors exponentially. The mimic presence now multiplied into coordinated triplet formation, herding me like a wounded prey animal in classic wolf-pack rear flank lead positioning through the increasingly technical terrain of rock slabs and root ladders. Shenandoah National Park's Skyline Drive offered illusory views of the Shenandoah Valley far below, but elongated shadows clung tenaciously to the jeep trails paralleling the AT's white blazes like asphalt veins pulsing with malevolent intent. 15 pounds melted rapidly from my once athletic frame through calorie deficit and stress cortisol. Hallucinations began bleeding into reality as peripheral vision registered phantom hikers matching my pace exactly at tree-line fringes. Waynesboro medical visit yielded grim diagnosis of high-altitude psychosis variant with diazepam prescription that dulled edges but failed to deter the escalating assaults. Trail re-entry provoked mimic fury previously unseen. icy phalanges manifesting physically to graze my pack shoulder straps with corpse-cold precision nightly. Tent stakes systematically uprooted each dawn discovery, revealing relocated positions encircling my sleep spot in ritual patterns. Harper's Ferry Appalachian Trail headquarters offered brief Thru-hiker reunion solace amid beer-fueled camaraderie. But the entity lurked at the perimeter, scaring wide-eyed volunteers with repeated peripheral glimpses darting between parked Subarus and REI minivans. Pennsylvania's notorious Rocksylvania sections shredded my Solomon trail runners to tatters, requiring constant rock hopping. The mimic capitalized thrice, tripping me viciously with invisible root extensions, leaving purple hematomas blooming across shins and forearms. New Jersey's infamous bogs sucked at boots, with vacuum mud creating sucking sounds mimicked perfectly ahead, luring me toward deceptive mires disguised as solid ground. New York's Harriman State Park represented the thickets at their absolute densest, with laurel hells impenetrable, forcing full-body crawls. Crashing brush announced a now fully solidified bipedal stalker, whose yellow eyes locked lethal intent through 8-inch gaps between interwoven stems, phosphorescent glow illuminating bark-textured skin, stretched taut over elongated musculature. The Hudson River Valley finally shimmered like sapphire promise, far below New York's Bear Mountain, marking the Appalachian Trail's northernmost significant climb, with sweeping vistas earned through 1,200 feet of relentless switchbacks. Summit engulfed pea-soup fog reduced visibility to 5 yards maximum, as the mimic closed formation gap dramatically to mere 5 yards separation. Gravel mill voice coalesced through the moisture droplets hanging suspended. Ethan, trail, end, now. Marking first verbal communication beyond whispers. Physical form solidified completely for the first time. Towering 9-foot colossus shingled entirely in living bark, whose grain patterns shifted like breathing skin. Multi-jointed limbs terminating in 6-fingered claws raking furrows through spongy moss tundra. Elongated wolfish maw stretched impossibly wide, revealing concentric rings of obsidian-chipped teeth grinning eternal hunger. My terror-paralyzed stance mirrored perfectly as it beckoned with identical arm configuration, raised palm up in mocking invitation. The summit register book fluttered open to previous, desperate entries scrawled in trembling Sharpie. Shadow consumed my trailmate completely. Run while you still cast one. 1,000-foot precipice gaped immediately behind through swirling vapors. Sudden epiphany ignited through panic synapses. These wraiths sustained entirely through fear acknowledgement energy exchange. Denial represented ultimate weapon. Executing 180-degree pivot, maintaining eyes fixed forward on familiar white blaze sequence downhill toward lower elevations, I bellowed, "Rocky Top," Tennessee fight song at maximum lung volume with deliberate foot-stamping rhythm, disrupting pattern mimicry completely. The mimic responded with frequency-shattering keen, piercing the fog like shattering crystal decanter dissolving into harmless shreds, dispersing downwind rapidly. Trail corridor clarified instantly beneath feet. Triumphant silence reigned as first unguarded birdsong pierced cloud deck, signaling victory hard won. Mount Katahdin summit reached 178 grueling days later, with mimic presence vanished completely during final triumphant 500-mile push through Maine's 100-mile wilderness and Bigelow Range. Denial proving ultimate exorcism? Or merely biding time in shadowed realms plotting return engagement? Returned urbanite Atlanta dweller now finds elongated shadows dogging midnight neighborhood strolls with perfect footfall synchronization, echoing perpetually from sidewalk cracks behind. Appalachian Trail physically conquered, remains echo eternal haunting quietest moments. Critical lesson etched indelibly. Never acknowledge, never glance backward under any circumstances, lest you feed what hunts invisibly. Shadows continue their patient pacing across America's backcountry trails, waiting eternally for the next thru-hiker whose will cracks first. Subscribe for more American hauntings. Ozark's Cabin Terror awaits next midnight release.